listen, let me say thanks right off the bat for everybody being here, what we're going to talk about is the school year has started, and we're in Lubbock, Texas. We take everything from a very collaborative and cooperative approach, and so you have several agencies here, from school district police to sheriff's office, Lubbock Police Department, the FBI, our federal partners, and the district attorney's office. And specifically, I'm going to open up and talk about hoax threats against schools, whether it's about school shootings or any sundry of things that may elicit a police response or frighten or scare students or interrupt the daily operations of schools and what they're supposed to be doing day in and day out. And those can be anything from a verbal threat or what we most commonly see are written threats on social media. And that's one of the things that's causing a lot of problems in our societies. And too often, when there is a real situation that occurs somewhere else in the country, that tends to spark hoax threats to occur elsewhere in our community and other communities after one of these events occur. And so we want to get on top of that before those things occur as we start into the new school year. And my part of this, I want to really emphasize that this is not a joke. A hoax threat is serious. It's not a joke, and we take them very seriously. They cause panic and stress in our schools, with the students, with our parents, with the faculty, and with law enforcement. And they elicit a response. They're not ignored, and they tie up our public safety resources that need to be used elsewhere. They cost a lot in taxpayer revenue for us to respond to those, but we're not going to ignore them. And so they can result in criminal charges, and that's what we're really going to focus on today, or what the consequences are for making a hoax threat. And we want to make sure that people understand how serious that is, and that we're going to respond to such an event, and we're going to take it serious as though it's real, because it very well could be real. And if we find out and realize that it is a hoax threat, we're going to investigate that until we figure out who made that threat, and we're going to take criminal action against the people responsible for that. And again, I'll close my part, and then we'll move on to the next speaker by re-emphasizing that we take these threats seriously, and everyone else needs to. And so whether you're a parent or another student and you see these things, we need to know about that. You need to tell the school faculty, call the police, report that, and don't assume other people do, and don't simply ignore that. And understand that we are going to take that seriously, and we're going to take the appropriate action with that. So with that, I'm going to introduce the Lubbock County Sheriff, Sheriff Kelly Rowe.
Well, for my part in this, I was asked to kind of talk a little bit about what does an active shooter response, how the guidelines are as to what to expect if we have something occurring on a school campus, when law enforcement arrives to start supporting that event and ending it. First off, I think it's always clear to be, it's important to be clear that the schools are going to make individually, and university campuses will make their decisions on certain protocols that they have the faculty and the staff prepared to do, whether that's to secure down in place, hide, to try to evacuate, those types of things. Those are decisions that will be made at the school district and at the university level. For us in law enforcement, an active shooter situation, obviously we have one initial priority, and that is to end the violence and stop the threat. So as you've watched over a period of time, this has evolved. You'll see, historically a lot of times you might see where there was lag time while you would see tactical or SWAT type units coming together to go in and force and do this. Now we've seen, time is of the essence, so we're starting to train, work towards more single officer response. We're training, preparing, equipping our patrol officers and those folks to be able to respond with the type of equipment, type of weapon systems they need to be able to go in, because again, first priority is stop the threat, end the violence as quick as possible. These situations, as people, I'm sure as everybody can understand, they evolve rapidly and they're very dynamic. There's a big difference in a situation where we have shooting actually occurring and somebody being able to, an officer being able to zero right in on that and deal with it, to situations where it's ended or it's at a pause, and we may not have clear suspect information and any type of identifiers to be able to pursue. So at that point, things may begin to slow down as additional units are arriving. Communication is our big key in all of this, because as units arrive, we start linking up and we start mobilizing as we move through. I think some factors that you need to be aware of, and I think particularly family members as well as the students need to be aware of when situations like this arrive and we have a large law enforcement presence responding to deal with it. First and foremost, until a suspect or suspects have been identified and have been confirmed and or been neutralized or isolated, law enforcement will treat everyone as a suspect at that point. So it should not be alarming, and we don't want to alarm when we're given very specific, detailed, ordered instructions, to keep everybody as safe as possible until we actually have completely identified and thoroughly know who we're dealing with there. Secondly, compliance is expected. When given instructions by those officers, time is of the essence there. We don't have time for, delay, for argument. And again, and the chief kind of touched on a little bit, we're in this technological day and age where everybody has their cell phones, they're wanting to Instagram, and they're wanting to shoot video. I know after a recent event we had, there was lots of video shot, and whatnot, but it was causing delays in getting these kids evacuated out ultimately and getting them to safety where we could reunify them with their families and close the event out. Again, like I said, given the speed and tempo of what's going on there, we need compliance. First and foremost, we've got to have people moving. And again, like I said, if things are happening where we're asking people to put their hands on their heads, in some cases, there may be restraints applied, those types of things, situationally dependent. That may happen until we have identified the threat, ensured the location is secure, and then can begin the process of reunifying those families back and forth. So again, that's a kind of a nutshell of a lot of things. I think it's very important for everyone to know that, and the chief again touched on this, that's why we have a lot of coordination between multiple agencies. We've got these things planned out and to a degree of where things happen. If it's happening in the city, where the city would be the first responder. If it's happening out in the county, where we would be the first responder, and where we would get our support our support from either state assets or federal personnel as they could bring assets to bear depending on the nature of it. So with that, I will pass it over to our District Attorney, Matt Powell, to talk about, I think, the prosecution of hoaxes and those things.
Thanks, Sheriff, and welcome everybody to the DA's office. I should have gone first, right? So, but we appreciate y'all being here, and I always say this is a testament to the way we do things here in Lubbock County. Fortunately, we haven't had an incident involving an active shooter in one of our schools, and I pray to God we never do. But I think it's important for us to have these type of meetings and have this type of coalitions already formed in case we do have some type of emergency that we need to do. And we want to thank the FBI. They were one that spearheaded this from us, and we appreciate Agent Tapp being here today with us. And like the chief said, and the sheriff both, if you're like me and you got gray hair, we kind of remember, it's sad that we got to have these conversations. I remember going to my high school with a shotgun in the back of my truck. I mean, and those days are gone, unfortunately, and we live in a world where we do have these incidents that occur, and for our part, we'll tell anybody that's even contemplating that, and I hope there's nobody in here, that we take these things extremely serious. When you used to, and I think a lot of kids get on their Facebook page, they get on Twitter and everything, Instagram and everything else, and they think nobody's watching. But law enforcement is clearly watching when those take place, and if there's a threat, we're going to take it very serious. You can see by just the folks who are here today how seriously we're taking this. And so, our word is if you make those types of threats, you're going to face prosecution. When you come over here, when these guys put in the work and develop and devote the resources that are necessary to run these things down, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort by a lot of folks to get this done. When that happens, we're going to address it, and we're going to be very clear on what our message is, that we don't want that happening in our community. So Our message is very simple as far as the DA's office is concerned. If you make these types of threats, there's going to be a lot of consequences that are going to take place because of them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Agent Tapp, who's with us here today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the being here today. My name is Aaron Tapp. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI who covers this part of West Texas, and I appreciate all of you being here with us today as we discuss and have a thoughtful conversation about how we can keep our kids safe in school. I'd like to thank Chief Stevens, Sheriff Rowe, DA Powell, the law enforcement community. I spent 4 years in Kansas prior to coming here, dealing with state, local, and other agencies, and developed a great relationship and rapport. And I didn't know that when I came to Texas, if we'd be able to have such a great collaborative relationship, and we truly do here in Texas. It's a testament, like everybody said, to the nature of law enforcement here in Lubbock and how everybody works together and comes together to ensure that our communities are safe. Let me talk about the FBI's role in threats to our schools. Obviously, the FBI takes every threat that we receive seriously. We don't have an option to do otherwise. We receive a lot of threat information in the FBI. In the last 6 months after the attack on Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, the FBI in the Dallas region, which includes the Lubbock area, has received over 700 pieces of threat information that we've had to act on, evaluate, and take care of. That's a lot. For each piece of information that we receive, we depend on our local partners and our state partners to ensure every lead is handled properly, and to make sure everything's analyzed the way it needs to be and where necessary, investigated and prosecuted. And that makes sense. Our local partners here in Lubbock, in the county, in the schools, have people in the schools. They have resource officers. They have developed relationships with community leaders and with school officials. We've had the experience when we call our local partners to handle some sort of threat information where we'll be explaining an individual or some sort of threat, and they'll literally finish our sentences with some piece of relevant information to kind of connect things in a way that helps us to better understand what the nature of the threat is and how we can best address it. And again, the officers in the schools, the local police officers on the beat, they have the best tools and the best insight to deal with these school threats. So with all the access to the tools and their availability within the communities, the local and state agencies are the primary agencies charged and empowered to deal with this issue. It's almost always going to make the most sense for this threat information that needs to be reported to come into the local police department, to the school resource officer, to trusted teachers or administrators in the schools, so that information can be acted on immediately. It's just efficient to go to those local partners. Without exception, the FBI is going to coordinate with our local and state partners appropriately on any piece of threat information that we receive and any piece of threat information that they need our assistance on. We will always be there to help in any way possible. I'll just end with this. Probably the most important thing as we start this new school year that all of us need to remember is that after each of these tragedies that we've seen at Parkland and at Santa Fe and at Newtown, people who knew the perpetrators saw red flags. And as we talk to those folks, that really develops more. So what I would leave is that if you observe red flags, if you see some disturbing change in behavior or some online posting or a specific threat, you need to report that to the local police, to the sheriff, as soon as possible so that information can be disseminated, handled, and dealt with in the appropriate way. Please be aware of the warning signs. Please be conscientious as you're online. You're dealing with peers and you're dealing with students at school so that we can ensure we have a safe school year. The FBI's mission is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution of the United States, and we look forward to working with our partners this year, as we do every year, to ensure that we have a safe and successful school year. Thank you.
We'll open it up for questions if anybody has any, and y'all tell me who you want to ask, and we'll bring them up.
DA Powell.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of them had asked, when you say you're going to prosecute those who are caught committing these hoax threats, what does that mean? Does that mean it's a misdemeanor? jail time?
Well, it can mean lots of different things. It can mean anywhere from a misdemeanor up to a felony offense, depending on what the nature of it is, depending on what their actions are, depending on what they do. It could be very serious. It could land you up to 20 years in prison. You know, again, when we start talking about juveniles, we can certify juveniles, we can treat them as an adults. The courts have come, you know, kind of full circle on that. The juvenile laws are not the same as they were when we were kids, and you know, the biggest problem was chewing gum in class and things like that. Now they're very serious and very strong, and so depending upon what the crime is, depending on what the actions are, they can face very serious consequences.